Hi, I'm Tom Stephenson, and welcome to MS Project Made Easy. I'm a professor of construction management at George Brown College in Toronto, and I've been teaching this a long time, and I've been doing a lot of things with industry professionals in the construction sector with Microsoft Project. And one of the things I realized is that you can use Microsoft Project for pretty much any kind of project that you may be thinking about. So this is not going to be a series about construction projects necessarily, although I think I'll use a bathroom renovation as an example. But if you want to plan a wedding, if you want to plan some sort of project that maybe even you have at home or at the office, it's a fairly simple tool to use, and you can use it to different levels of complexity. That's the other thing. You don't have to go the full 9 yards with it, adding resources and costs and all of these other things for it to be an effective tool. But in this series, I will slowly build on this schedule and show you the different tools and techniques within it so that you can take it to whatever level that you want and use it effectively. I think one of the problems is nobody really trains people on this software, and they just start using it, and then they kind of get frustrated with it until they figure out that it's a pretty good software to work with, and it's just a few little tips and tricks here and there. You can make it work for you, and that's what the purpose is. You should be able to schedule anything that you want in the software. The software shouldn't be telling you how to schedule. So this bathroom renovation that I have here is pretty much complete, and it's got a lot of things in it. It's got resources, it's actually got costs associated with it, so they've been loaded onto it. It's got a decent work breakdown structure for the size of it. If you scroll to the left, you can go to different screens. You can see that I've got a different screen, a resource sheet created that has all the resource in it. And some of them work for me, and some of them are subcontractors. Like I said, if you're planning a wedding, you might have some things that are your friends and family are going to do, and some things that you're going to have to get vendors to do. So anything that you need to plan or schedule, you can pretty much do in this program. Now, I'm going to go to another screen, which will be a little bit more basic, but this is just giving you a heads up of where this series of videos is going to go to. And in this first video, I just really want to show you how to set up your activities, set up your predecessors and successors, make sure that you know how to do a work breakdown structure, and not too much more in this first video. I don't want to get too deep into it. We'll go in baby steps, if you will, bird by bird, as I like to say. So I'm just going to go to this other screen here, and I've already got some stuff up above, but before I get into that, I'm just going to maybe type in a few things like task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4, task 5, just to experiment with. And that's another good thing with this program. Just try things, experiment with it. It's not going to bite you, just try them, and then you get to see how the program behaves and how it works. And so we just entered a few tasks. And by the way, I'm using Microsoft Project 2016. 2019 is pretty much the same. 2013 is not much different. If you're using anywhere, I would say from 2010 to 2019 beyond, there has not been major changes since 2007. 2007, yeah, you better go looking for some older videos, or if there are those ones, there was drastic changes from that turnover. But the other things that they've been adding have been some value added features, but the screens, the tabs, the menus, very, very, very close to what it is. So it should be fine for you, whichever version you have. So we have task 1 to task 5, and I'm just going to put in some durations here. So the first thing that you're going to notice that when I put in some durations, well, when I type these in, you notice these little thumbtacks. Well, that is Microsoft Project saying manual schedule. You know what? If you want to keep things simple, I wouldn't bother with manual scheduling, right? The problem with manual scheduling is, like, if I put a duration on task 1, say 7 days, it just puts this sort of heightened line there, but it's just kind of sitting there. It's not really scheduled. I don't see any dates over here, right? So it's kind of a holding pattern for it to keep it simple on the explanation of that for now. What I would do is I would auto schedule everything. So to auto schedule, you can just scroll down to the bottom of the screen. It says new tasks manually scheduled. Well, you know what? I want new tasks auto scheduled. And just that one thing there, that can save you a whole heap of frustration. You may spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's going on with why doesn't it move? Why doesn't it put the dates on? Well, it's because it's in manual schedule. Now, the ones that I've already have, if I want to change them. So what that did, the changing it to auto schedule. Now, if I do task 6, watch what happens. See how it's got a bar there? Well, now it's going to be auto schedule. See how it's got dates there? So now those dates are indicated. And it will show today's date, whatever today's date is on your computer. That's what it'll show until you put a start date for your project. Because when you're planning a project, it's never going to be on the day that you're actually creating the schedule. It's going to be some day in the future. So we'll get into that too. So what I would do now to change the other ones, you could go individually and you could change them like this. And that's the other thing, like most software programs, you can do the same thing in Microsoft Project 10 different ways. So, you know, whatever way you learn and you like, that's fine. I tend to show 1 or 2 ways, but I don't get into all 10 different ways. What I would probably do if I had a whole bunch that were in manual schedule, I'd click this, I call this the square icon box for lack of a better name, and that selects everything. So that selects everything. If I want to do a quick thing to select everything, rather than highlighting, I just click there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my task tab. So you see the menu along the top. I've got these points here and tabs here. So I'm going to click on the task tab. And when I click on the task tab, I'm going to click on auto schedule. So now I've got auto schedule. And so you see that it just made them all automatically scheduled. Boom, done. That's easy to do all at once, and that's what you want. That's how you want to have them all sort of listed there. You see how there's a question mark there? When you don't put a duration, Microsoft Project is saying, hey, you haven't given me a duration. Is 1 day okay? And 1 day is probably not okay. So you want to look for the question marks and make sure that you've put in the durations that you want. So maybe here I'll put 5 days. Maybe here I'll put 4 days and 3 days and 2 days. And maybe here I will put 1 day. So you can see how the bars on the Gantt chart, this is the bar chart or the Gantt chart over here. They call it a Gantt chart. That's named after the guy that invented it in the early 1900s, Henry S. Gantt. And that's showing you how long this is going to take from today's date. So the first thing that those of you that are observant will notice that it says 7 days, 7 days. So we've got from Friday to the Monday. Well, it's 7 working days. So you got Friday, 1 plus 5 plus 1. So that's 7 working days. It's not counting Saturday and Sunday. Right now, it's set for a standard calendar, and the standard default calendar is Monday to Friday, 8-hour days, 40 hours a week. You can go in and you can change it and make it whatever you want. I'll do that in another video, talk about the calendars. And I also have some pre-done videos that are a little bit maybe more advanced that I'll leave in the notes at the bottom. So I've got 10 other videos that you can take a look at, and they're a little bit more advanced, and they've sort of got headings that you can jump to, but this is more trying to make it easy and not go too fast with things. So we've got these activities here, and they're all starting on the same day. Well, that's not the way I want to do things. So I'm going to actually put in predecessors, and a predecessor is actually saying what must happen before I do the next thing. So you notice I've got numbers here. The only reason this is starting at 31 to 36 is I've got a bunch of stuff up here. So that's the only reason that's starting up there. But I've got 31 to 36. So I've got predecessors. So I'm going to put in number 31. And all I'm doing with that is I'm saying that number 31, row 31, has to be done before I start row 32. It doesn't care about the names, how you spelt it. It cares about the numbers in the rows. So if I want to have this one come next, I would put 32, and it'll put 32. If I want the next one, it'll put 33. So that's a nice way of doing it. I'm just going to blank that one out for now. If I wanted to do a bunch of them in a row, I could just highlight all of them and then I could link them together. All right. And so you see they go one after the other, after the other, after the other. So that's in complete sequence, right? Nice, nice and quickly done. But maybe that's not even how I want to run my project. Maybe I want to have two things go at the same time. So maybe then I would have to have these linked together. So I would maybe change this from 32, so I would have 31. Now you see how they're both starting at the same time. When this is done, they're both starting at the same time. And maybe this one, which is not connected, that's another thing that you got to learn, and I'll repeat it in other sessions, but you don't want to have activities that aren't connected. Because if this needs to be done for you to get married and have your reception, or if this needs to be done for us to get the inspection done for the plumbing in the bathroom, then that has to be connected to something. So we shouldn't be leaving things hanging. So on task 4, I'm going to just say that I want to have task 32, comma 33. I want both of them. And now it's not hanging. So that's kind of showing you how you can link the tasks. And you know what? Predecessors means what must happen before a particular activity. So it's all relative to the activity you're looking at. So 31 must finish. 31 must finish before I start 33 and before I start 32. Whenever I create predecessors, you know what? I also create successors. So I can insert columns. That's one of the things about Microsoft Project. It looks very much like a spreadsheet. And for those of you that are listening, if you use Excel, that's pretty good heads up for it. There's a number of things kind of the way Excel works that, oh, I could do this here too. You know, you could hold the control key down and you could highlight a bunch of different cells, right? So some of those things work the same way. I could grab the top of a column and I could pull it over. Oh, okay. I could insert a row in top of a task. Instead of insert row, it says insert task, and it'll insert a new task. I can delete a row by highlighting it and deleting it. So a lot of those things that you do in Excel, very, very, very similar. So that gives you an idea. Of course, it's a Microsoft product. It works the same way. Heads up that makes it easier. So predecessors, if we create predecessors, you know what? At the same time, we're creating successors. So I'm going to insert a column called successors. Now, the difference between Microsoft Project and Excel is it has, I don't know, I haven't counted them, but maybe it's got hundreds, 150 or 200 different columns. And for sure, I do not use all of them, but for certain people and certain reasons, they may want to use them. One that I do use fairly frequently is the successor column. So if you know the first letter of the column name, that will be very helpful in finding it. So all you got to do, I know it's successors is type S when I've right-clicked on the column, and it will show me here, and I slide down to where I see successors. And so now it shows me all of the successors. So a successor to task 1 is task 32 and task 33. Of course, yes, that comes after it. Just like looking the other way is predecessors, right? You can be looking at it forwards or backwards. So predecessors is 32 and 33 here. That's getting used to that logic. Takes a few minutes, especially if you haven't really done any project management or project planning. But once you get the hang of that, it's very helpful. And then visually, this should help because you're looking at, no, I'm not starting this till then. Why is that there? And you can do different relationships if that's not working. So that's sort of giving you a little bit of a heads up there. The other thing is maybe just maybe we don't want to have them all finish to start relationships. We can do a few other types of relationships here. So for example, I could click on task 5. I could double click and it brings up this task information box. By double clicking on this, it brings up the task information box. And this is like the properties for those tasks. It's got like all the information you could ever want and more of these different activities. So to keep it simple right now, I can, if I go to predecessors, remember I said you could do the same thing many ways. Instead of typing in numbers, I could actually pull down and I could pick activities that I want to have as a predecessor from here. It's the same thing as typing in the numbers over there. I don't usually do it this way. Here I usually do it the way I showed you. So, but we are on task 4 here, and it has a finish to start relationship, right? So this is the predecessor. So we're on task 5. Task 4 is the predecessor. So it's talking about task 4. We're in task 5. It has a finish to start relationship. Well, you know what? I could make that a start to start relationship. So if I go start to start, and you see there's 4 different kinds here. Well, there's finish to start, start to start, finish to finish, start to finish. Forget about start to finish. Nobody ever uses it. Start to start is quite handy. And you can use it, but if you're just a beginner, you know what, stick with finish to start for most of it. Like, you can do a lot of stuff with finish to start. Start to start would look like this, and you know what, I could also give it a lag. So I'll show you a lag. I'll say 1 day. I'm going to click OK. See how that pushed it? So when this activity 4 starts, 1 day after it starts, we're going to start this activity, right? Because we don't always start them at exactly the same time. That's one way that we could do it. Now, I should close up this open end here, though, because I've created that, right? So I should, under task 6, put 35, like it's got, and comma 34. And that closes that up. In case this takes longer, I want it to push it out, right? So if this takes longer, I want it to push it out. That's the goal. You want everything linked up, so if something takes longer, it starts to move along, right? And maybe this eventually is going to outpass the other one just because of how the relationship is set up. So that's something that you want to consider when you're linking things up. The other thing I could have done is, instead of start to start, right? Instead of start to start, I could have had finish to start. We'll see what this works here. I could have had finish to start, and so you see how that's linked up there. And I could have, there's another little trick you can do. You can just, if you can get on that little line there, double click, it brings up the same kind of box that I had in the task information box, and I can do the same thing in here. Remember I said you can do the same thing multiple ways. Maybe I want to put a negative lag here. So I'm going to put -2 days. And that pulls it back 2 days. So you can do those kind of things. So all I'm saying is you can pretty much manipulate it the way you want. My advice to you is, if you're just starting out and you're just kind of doing small projects and that sort of thing and figuring it out, just keep it to finish to start to begin with. I know some pretty big contractors, and in some jurisdictions they just like to try and do the whole schedule of finish to start and leads and lags because it keeps it simpler and everybody knows how the program and the software behaves. But as you get more advanced, definitely there's a lot of advantages. But I'm trying to keep it simple for you. All right. The other thing is, I'd like to see the critical path here. And the critical path, without getting too, again, complicated, if you go to the format screen and you click critical tasks, you'll see that it lights up and you can see how things are flowing. So where the red is, that's the critical path. Where the blue is, that's where you got flexibility. If this can take a day longer without your project taking longer, right? So this can take a day longer without your project taking longer. So that's a nice quick way of making those adjustments and fixing that up there, right? So if, let's say that this particular item took 6 days, watch what happens. This becomes red and that becomes blue. It's no longer on the critical path. This is the critical path. Anything on the critical path, if it takes longer, your project will take longer. If it takes shorter, it might take shorter. So like in this case, moving this to 5 days, yes, but now everything's become critical. If I make this 4 days, right, it's not shortening my project anymore. It won't shorten my project date. So getting a little sense of how that is, it's not a bad idea if you're starting out. Just do like 5 or 6 simple activities, move them around, manipulate them, try some of the different predecessors, successors, the relationships, finish to start, start to start. You can try finish to finish. Like I said, I could create another one, say task, oops, in the wrong column there, task 7. You could do task 7. You could say maybe that's 2 days or 3 days. You could double click here. You could go to here and click on task 6 as its predecessor. And what did I say? Finish to finish? Sounds good. Finish to finish. And we'll click OK. And then that's going this activity can't finish unless that activity finishes, right? So you're looking at those relationships. So that's just giving you, again, another sense of how you can set them up and see how they behave. The other thing I didn't mention that you probably want to know is you can set different durations. So if let's see, I'll just create another 5 or 6. Keep those ones there for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. And so for those 6 activities, we can have different time spans. So I could say 1. If I just do 1 and enter, it should do days unless somebody was into the options of your program and changed the default to something else. So you could just go 1 and that'll do days, or 5 and enter, that'll do days. You could do 5D and that'll do days. You could do 5H, that'll do hours. You could do 5M, that'll do minutes. You could do 5W, 5W, weeks. You kind of know where this is going, right? 5MO, months. So that's how that can use different time frames. One of the ones I'll mention too is, watch this. A lot of people, even power users, don't really know how this works, but you go 5ED, right? 5ED, and that does elapsed days. So watch the difference between these two when I go 5ED. That shortens that, but what it's doing, it's counting the weekend, elapsed days. So you know what, like in construction as an example, if we had 7 days for concrete to cure, you'd probably want 7 days, ED. Because it's not like the concrete hits Friday night and it says, oh, it's the weekend, I'm going to stop curing and I'll start. No, you want it to count those days right through the weekend. So that's a quick shortcut. You can always do things in the calendar, but if you need elapsed days quickly, that's a good way of doing it. So there's these little nuanced differences. Very often, in construction we'll stick to days, but you know what? You're doing some smaller, more intricate project. You might want to split things up. Go by hours or something of that nature. All right, so I'm just going to highlight these and press delete, and that just gets rid of those. The other thing that I mentioned is when you want to start the project. So when you actually want to begin the project, you would go to the Project tab. So let's take a look at this menu across the top. Under File, this is where you're going to save your project to begin with, and print, and we can talk about that in another class, or video. And what we want to look at is the menu across the top. We've got the Task tab, Resource, Report, Project, View, Format. Well, I kind of showed you in Format, you can change, different color schemes and different things that you might like to try on it. Definitely, it's generally very helpful to turn this on just so you can see the critical path. And see the joining bars of it. Some people, the joining bars, they don't like. You can always turn things on and off in this program. You can go to Layout and you can say, all right, I don't want to see the bars. A lot of construction contractors might want that if they don't want the client to see where the critical path is, so they turn it off, and then you don't know where the relationships is, especially when you turn this off. That wouldn't be what I would do. I am very into communicating things accurately, so that wouldn't be my advice. You have this relationship link here. We click it back on and then they're back in. So you can always turn things on and off. That's another thing to keep in mind. So task, resource, that we'll do in another session. reports, lots of stuff you can do with that, like in that first project I showed you before we started. And here's project. All right, so this is where you can put your start date. So the way to put your start date is you go to project information, and you can say start date, and then you can say what date you want. So if I didn't want to start this till March 30th, 2021, I click there and I click OK, and it's going to move everything to March 30th, right? So everything that I started that I didn't link to anything, it moves it to that, lock, stock, and barrel. That's very good. That's how you set up your project start date. Very important for that to occur. So now you've set up a base schedule and you've got the first basics of understanding. What we'll do in the next session is we'll take this bathroom and we'll start to refresh you a little bit with the predecessors and the successors, and we'll do a little bit of what we call a work breakdown structure where you can have different headings with the work, and we'll talk about calendars and putting in holidays and things like that. You want to make sure that your schedule represents the time you have and which days you plan to work on it. Especially for work-related projects, you want to have all the holidays in, and that'll be very, very helpful for you. So I'm Tom Stephenson, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Look in the notes. I'll leave a list of links to the other a little bit more advanced videos that I have on MS Project, so you can go straight to them. And please subscribe to my channel. If you click the bell, you'll get notifications of when new videos are coming up. And look under the playlist MS Project. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye for now.